In museums across Europe today sit thousands of priceless artifacts from the Kingdom of Benin. But they were not gifts. They were taken. Taken during a violent invasion in 1897 that destroyed one of Africa's most powerful kingdoms. A kingdom protected by enormous walls, a kingdom filled with extraordinary art, a kingdom that had existed for centuries. So what happened? Why would a global empire launch a military expedition against a kingdom deep in the forests of West Africa? To answer that question, we must go back in time. Long before colonial rule reached Africa, a powerful civilization flourished in what is now southern Nigeria. The Kingdom of Benin. Hidden within dense tropical forests, Benin grew into one of the most organized and influential states in West Africa. Its rulers were known as Obas, sacred kings who held both political and spiritual authority. At the center of the kingdom stood a remarkable city, Benin City. But this was no ordinary city. Travelers from Europe who visited Benin centuries ago struggled to describe what they saw. Wide streets, impressive royal compounds, strict laws, and powerful leadership. For many outsiders, Benin was unlike anything they expected to find in Africa. But the city had another secret, something even more astonishing. Surrounding the kingdom was an enormous defensive system, the Great Walls of Benin. Massive earthworks stretching across forests and villages, deep moats, towering earthen walls. For centuries they protected the kingdom from invaders. But just how large were these defenses? Modern researchers believe the Benin earthworks stretched across thousands of kilometers when the entire network is considered. Some historians have described them as one of the largest pre-modern earthworks ever constructed anywhere in the world. Yet the strength of Benin was not only in its defenses. Palace was something even more remarkable, something that would one day shock the world. Within the palace, master craftsmen created works of extraordinary beauty. Bronze plaques, ivory carvings, royal sculptures. These were not simple decorations. They were historical records, stories cast in metal, images of warriors, kings, ceremonies, and victories. Today they are known as the Benin Bronzes, but at the time, few people outside the kingdom had ever seen anything like them. And soon, events far beyond Benin's borders would change everything. By the late 19th century, Europe's great powers had turned their attention toward Africa. Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, all were racing to claim territory across the continent. This period became known as the Scramble for Africa, and the competition was fierce. But one kingdom remained independent, the Kingdom of Benin, and that independence would soon attract dangerous attention. The forests around Benin contained valuable trade goods, palm oil, rubber, ivory. These resources were essential for European industries during the Industrial Revolution. But the leaders of Benin controlled who could trade within their territory. Foreign merchants could not simply enter the kingdom. To British traders and colonial officials, this was a problem, a serious one, because empire demanded access, and access required control. At the center of the kingdom stood Oba Ovanramwen Nagbaisi, the ruler of Benin, guardian of its traditions and protector of its independence. But across the sea stood another powerful force, the British Empire. Representing British interests in the region was a man named James Robert Phillips, the acting consul general. Phillips believed Benin must open itself fully to British trade. But the kingdom had other ideas, and the tension between them was about to explode. In January 1897, Phillips organized a delegation to travel to Benin City. His goal was simple: confront the Oba, force the kingdom to accept British demands. But there was a problem. At that moment, the Oba was conducting sacred religious ceremonies. According to Benin tradition, outsiders were forbidden from entering the city during these rituals. Benin chiefs warned the British delegation, "Do not come. Wait until the ceremonies are finished." But the warning was ignored, and that decision would change history. As the British delegation moved through the forests toward Benin territory, something unexpected happened. Benin warriors attacked. Several members of the British party were killed. Only a few survived. When news reached British authorities, the reaction was immediate and devastating. Within weeks, Britain assembled a massive military expedition. Around 1,200 troops, armed with rifles, machine guns, and artillery. Their mission was clear: capture Benin City, remove the Oba, and bring the kingdom under British control. The expedition advanced quickly, and the ancient defenses of Benin were about to face something they had never encountered before: industrial warfare. In February 1897, British troops reached the capital. Many residents had already fled into the surrounding forests, but the city itself could not escape. Fires spread through the streets. Buildings were destroyed. The royal palace was attacked. Sacred shrines were looted. Historical accounts from the expedition also describe acts of brutality during the conquest. Some Benin fighters who surrendered were reportedly executed by British soldiers. Inside the royal palace, British troops discovered thousands of royal artworks, bronze plaques, ivory carvings, royal sculptures, objects that recorded the history and traditions of the kingdom. The soldiers seized them. In the days that followed, members of the expedition gathered the captured artworks and displayed them among the troops in celebration of their victory. Some accounts describe soldiers posing with the bronzes and arranging the seized objects as trophies of conquest. For the conquerors, it was a moment of triumph. For the people of Benin, it marked the humiliation of a once powerful kingdom. Thousands of these artifacts were then removed from Benin and shipped to Europe. Many were later sold to museums and collectors to help cover the cost of the expedition. When the bronzes began appearing in European museums, they produced an unexpected reaction. Many scholars were astonished by their artistic quality and technical sophistication. For generations, colonial stereotypes had suggested that African societies lacked advanced metalworking traditions. But the Benin Bronzes told a very different story. Their intricate casting techniques revealed a highly developed tradition of metallurgy that had existed in West Africa for centuries. The discovery forced many European researchers to reconsider long-held assumptions about African civilizations. But for the people of Benin, these objects were never simply works of art. They were sacred cultural treasures, records of history, symbols of royal authority. The conquest of Benin also ended the kingdom's independence. Oba Ovanramwen Nogbaisi was eventually captured and forced into exile, a sacred ruler removed from his kingdom by a foreign power. Benin territory was absorbed into the British colonial administration that would eventually become Nigeria. For many years after the conquest, the story of the Kingdom of Benin was not widely taught in colonial education systems. Much of Africa's own history received far less attention than the history of Europe. As a result, many Africans grew up knowing little about powerful kingdoms like Benin. But history has a way of resurfacing. Over time, historians and researchers began rediscovering these stories. The achievements of the Kingdom of Benin gained renewed recognition, and the debate over the Benin Bronzes began to grow. Nigeria and many scholars have long called for the return of the artifacts taken during the invasion of 1897. In recent years, some museums and institutions have begun returning certain pieces. Yet many of the bronzes still remain in foreign collections, and the conversation continues. More than 100 years after the fall of Benin, its legacy still lives on. Its artworks remain among the most extraordinary examples of African creativity. And the story of 1897 remains a powerful reminder of a time when one of Africa's greatest kingdoms was destroyed. But its story was never erased. Today, the history of the Kingdom of Benin is being told once again, and the world is finally beginning to listen. If you found this story powerful, help others discover it. Like this video, share it, and subscribe for more untold stories from African history. And let us know in the comments, Do you believe the Benin Bronzes should be returned to Nigeria? Because history is not only about the past, it is about understanding the world we live in today.